Okay, so welcome everybody to the 2021 High School of Glasgow PE Department In Conversation With podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Megan Gaffney to today's podcast, who is a current women's international rugby star. I will ask Megan, with the help of some of our pupils, we have Olivia, Jamie, Hannah and Tom, some questions to get an insight into Megan's personal experience within elite sport. To give you some background on Megan, and Megan, please, if I've got any of these facts, call me out, but hopefully I'm correct. So you've represented Scotland at under 18s, under 20s, Scotland Women's A, Scotland Sevens, and the Scotland Women's 15-a-side team. You have a total of 31 caps for the 15-a-side and 14 caps for the Sevens. Megan, you've played both forms of the game, both Sevens and 15s across the globe, with some of your clubs being Edinburgh University, Hillhead, John Hill, Watsonians, and Manawatu in New Zealand. And am I right in thinking you've won the Scottish Cup twice, once with Hillhead and once with Watsonians? Is that right?
Yeah, I think I've won it a few other times with Murrayfield as well.
All right, okay. So we'll add Murrayfield to that.
I've played for quite a lot of clubs.
For that long list of achievements. Lots of rugby experiences. So, Megan, welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
We're all good. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Can you tell me what you've been up to?
Just today or
just today? Have you been training much? Have you been involved in rugby?
So at the moment I'm just working, I work for a rugby charity, so I've been doing that, just working from home. I'm just about to head off to training after this actually, and I'll train 6 till 8 at the Orium in Edinburgh. At the moment training probably 3 or 4 days a week with the squad, and then some extras outside of that. Fantastic.
So still fully involved in rugby during lockdown?
Yeah, we've been really lucky actually, been back in since August. Able to train and stuff. I know it's not the same for everyone, so
yeah, not the same for everyone, but it's great to hear that you are. It's great. So I'm going to crack over some questions. So can you tell us what your earliest sporting memories of school PE were?
Yeah, so I think I just remember I always wanted to play with the boys. So they used to split the PE class, boys and girls, and I used to hate it. And I'd always go to the teacher and be like, "Oh, can I play with the boys?" And to be fair, most of the time I did. They let me. I remember when I was in second year, the boys got to play rugby and they wanted the girls to play hockey. And I quite like hockey, but I was like, no, I want to play rugby. So I convinced the PE teacher to let me and this other girl play, which was fine for a couple of weeks. But then she broke her arm and that was the end of that. No more girls playing rugby with the boys.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but I used to love it. I was just one of these kids that did everything, really competitive, just loved it.
Fantastic. And so growing up, did you have sort of any, you say, played in lots of different activities, lots of different sports. Did you have any sporting heroes growing up? Anyone you sort of looked up to? Yeah,
Paula Radcliffe and Kelly Holmes were my two heroes. I used to do a lot of athletics and I think I always saw myself as Paula Radcliffe, except I'm never going to be a marathon runner. But I think, so when they were really big, I was probably 10, 11. So that's like my memory of wanting to be like them. There wasn't really rugby players, women rugby players, the same way there is now. So I looked up to them.
Yeah, a lot more role models within the game at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that keeps growing every year. It just gets bigger.
Fantastic. Well, brilliant. Well, Olivia, can I go to you for your first question, if you'd like to ask Megan?
What got you into rugby?
So I was actually talking about this with my mum the other day, and neither of us can really remember. I first played when I was in primary school, so maybe 7 or 8. And I think it was just because I didn't want to do ballet. There wasn't that many options for sport in the town I grew up in. Particularly girls' team sports, when you're younger, there doesn't seem to be that much going on. And I didn't want to do football because that's what my brother did, and I didn't want to do what he did. So the other option was rugby, and she just took me down one day. And I was running around with all the boys and just really loved it. I think for me, that was the place I could be really competitive. The friends I had, the other girlfriends that I had, I didn't really get that. So just a chance to really take it to the boys, really.
What was your first club? Was it North Berwick?
Yeah, North Berwick Minis.
Okay, fantastic. Brilliant. Hannah, can I go to you for your question now?
Yeah, so what's your favourite part about competing in tournaments and matches?
I like winning. That's always good. I think I love that I get to do it with my best friends. So we train so much together that the girls on my team, I could count on them for anything. So to be able to travel around and play rugby with them is just the best, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else.
And that probably leads me on to my next question. Obviously, you're representing Scotland. What's it like to represent your country at the very highest level? There's not many people get to say that. Not many people get to experience that. So what's it like?
It's really cool. I think if I stop and think about it too hard, I like freak myself out a bit. Like, whoa, I'm actually doing it. Singing the national anthem is so special, and I think when you're growing up, it's something you think might happen, but when it actually does, like, you can't really describe it. It's the reward for all the hard work as well, all the hard training, all the choices that you have to make to get there. So it's super special.
And do you have a preference? Do you prefer, because you've played a lot of sevens as well, and a lot of sort of sevens tournaments around the world, especially in Europe. What would you prefer, 15s or sevens, or is it just incomparable?
So up until probably this season, I would have said sevens, like without a thought. But I've actually been really enjoying 15s this season. We've got a really good setup. We're obviously working towards the World Cup, which is something I've never done, which is really exciting. I do like sevens because you get to go warm places, which is nice rather than playing in the snow. Probably if you made me choose, I'd say sevens, but it's close at the moment.
And what's happening with the World Cup? You mentioned it there, because obviously it's due to take place this year in Ireland. And so what did you say, in Ireland?
New Zealand.
In New Zealand. And sorry, I don't know where I thought Ireland from. Was Ireland the previous World Cup?
Yeah.
It was, so I'm getting confused now. But Scotland haven't qualified just yet. There's still matches to be played, is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a qualification process to go through, which has changed so many times just due to COVID. So we were meant to originally play in September, that got moved to December. That's been pushed back again. There's one European qualification spot left, so it's between us, Ireland, Spain and Italy. So there's going to be something between us to get that last spot, and then there's one more spot in sort of the world repechage. So we're just kind of planning for all eventualities at the moment, and just we'll be ready to go whenever the time comes.
And a World Cup in New Zealand would be amazing. What an experience! Yeah. But you played in New Zealand before. You lived in New Zealand for a wee while. You played for Manawatu, one of your representative honours. Can you tell me the best place you've played rugby? I'm guessing New Zealand's got to be up there.
Yeah, New Zealand was amazing just because of the way that the country thinks about rugby, the way it thinks about women's rugby, women's sport actually. Everyone plays something, everyone's so skillful and fit, and there's a real respect for female athletes, which I loved. I've played sevens in lots of cool places. I played in Hong Kong at the World Series sevens in front of a huge crowd, which was really cool. Played in Dubai, Canada, I've been to Caribbean, all over really. Love it.
Well, I guess the places with a warmer climate, sevens is probably a little bit more fun.
Yeah, and it's I get to go to the beach after as well.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And so my next question is, can you tell me something that you've, and this will be very interesting, one thing that you've learned and maintained to get yourself to the top? So is there any sort of lessons that you can reflect back on to think of things that you've maybe learned, or things that you've maybe sort of valued that have you know sort of allowed you to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think you have to enjoy the process and you have to enjoy the journey. Like, it's all very well playing for your country, but there's so much work and effort that goes into that, and not just from yourself, from your teammates, from your support system. So if you're not enjoying all of it, it's almost not worth it. And I'm not saying that every single training session is great fun and that I love standing outside in the wet and the cold doing extra running, but like when I finish playing, I think I'll look back on like the games and the games we win, but the people you meet and the bonds you make and stuff. So it's about more than just playing rugby on that pitch on that specific day. I think.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, very interesting. And yeah, you sounds like you've had quite a wide variety of different experiences and different rugby cultures as well. Jamie, I'm going to go to you for your question now. If you could ask Megan.
How much do you think women's rugby has grown in popularity over the past 2 or 3 years?
Massively, I think. I think since the introduction of sevens into Olympics, that's been a bit of a spark to the women's game. A lot of smaller countries are managing to field women's teams, so it's spread across the globe. And that version of the game is a lot more accessible. Obviously, you don't need as many people. You get a lot of athletes coming from different sports to try sevens. And I think that interest has in turn sparked interest in the 15s game. I think the last World Cup final was watched by like 4 million people or something here in the UK. It was on ITV1, which was like, that's never happened before. I think we're at the stage now where we just have to keep pushing. So trying to get women's sport on mainstream TV, get the role models out there, get the coverage. There's been a few sort of social media campaigns the last couple of years, which like we're getting there. There's still a long way to go, but I think it's definitely there's more attention on it and people will keep pushing.
And that leads me on, I think that's a great question. That leads me on to my next question is, you're obviously working towards hopefully a World Cup at some point, but sort of in the short term, you're working towards a postponed Women's Six Nations, hopefully taking place in April. What does a Six Nations camp look like? So what does that sort of involve for you at the moment? What does that entail?
So a weekend camp is pretty intense because we're all together for 2 days and we get all the exiles up. So a lot of girls that play down in England, they'll come up and we'll just have 2 sessions a day, normally about 2 hours per session. And we just go over everything, attack, defence, contact, set piece plays, other little bits and pieces. You'll get a bit of time to work in your unit. So forwards do a lot of scrums. I don't know how they can spend so much time doing that. Backs will maybe do a bit of kicking, a bit of chat. Over lunch, you'll do extra little bits and pieces just because that's the time that we have together. So you try and make the most of it. For a match week, if we were playing on the Saturday, we'd probably come into camp on the Tuesday and we just build it up slowly. So start of the week, there'd be quite a lot of rugby training. And then as you get closer to the game, you take away the intensity and you just really focus on the detail.
Brilliant. Well, you'll be pleased to hear that obviously our boys have been playing rugby at school, but our girls had some rugby before Christmas, before we went, and it was with Mr. Gillis. Girls, we enjoyed it. Lots of games, lots of small-sided games. So lots of fun. Yeah, no, that was brilliant. We have had lots of sport cancelled from all different levels, but certainly at school level at the moment. And you know, we've got swimmers here, hockey players, rugby players, footballers. And you know, it is frustrating when we're not getting to play the sports and the activities that we love. How are you staying positive and motivated during this time? Because although you are training, which is fantastic, you must be missing the game, the sort of the match day, the competition.
Yeah, so last Six Nations, I think we actually had 3 games cancelled while we were in camp. So we were all ready to go for the game, and then someone came in and said, "Oh no, like it's cancelled, you're all going home."
That must be really tough emotionally. That must be a bit of a...
But at that point we were like, oh, it's just this game, it'll be fine next week. Yeah. And here we are a year later. And I think just last year it was like one thing after the other. So Six Nations were cancelled. We were meant to go into South Africa to play sevens, that got cancelled. And you just keep thinking, oh, it's fine, the next thing will be fine. Then World Cup qualifiers got cancelled. So, I mean, it is tough, but you just have to focus not too far in front, just focus on what you're doing right now. Look at the positives. So December we were meant to be playing, but that all got cancelled, but it gave us a chance to really get stuck into training and improve our lifts in the gym and get fitter so that when we do play, we'll be better than we were before.
So work on other aspects of your game that you wouldn't usually have the time to.
Yeah, definitely. And now we've got some dates in the diary for April, so it feels like we're actually heading towards something now, which is nice.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then hopefully with the way things are going, it sounds like that will be a goer with the Women's Six Nations, which would be great.
Fingers crossed.
Tom, can I come to you for your next question, please?
Have you ever felt like giving up in your career as a rugby?
I think not necessarily giving up, but I've definitely wanted a change. Playing rugby for me is essentially a hobby. Like, I work as well, and I'm quite conscious that there's a lot of other experiences that I wanted to have. So for me, going traveling was really important. I wanted to do that before I was too old and serious. So I made the choice to go and do that. And I think for me, that was good, because when I came back, I was really refreshed and ready to get stuck back into rugby. I think, because for me, the thing that I love so much about rugby is the people and the bond you have with your team. I would struggle not to play rugby and not to have that team environment, but definitely being involved in an elite environment can get pretty intense. So I have had a couple of breaks throughout my career just to reset and set some new goals and come back more enthusiastic, I think.
Brilliant. Well, Megan, that leads me on to my last question. Quite a fitting question is, so women's rugby at the moment in Scotland isn't fully professional, and it's professional down south. What do you see the future of the women's game? Do you see it going fully professional in years to come?
I think so. I think if Scotland want to keep up with the rest of the world, that is what's going to have to happen. At the moment, we have maybe 8 to 10 girls they're not fully professional, but they're supported. So some only play rugby and train, some sort of work part-time, train part-time. I think to get more people onto that sort of setup is the first step. But I would love to see a fully professional Scotland women's team. I don't think it'll happen while I'm still playing, but for girls that are playing now at school, it's so exciting that could be their life.
And do you notice other nations going professional and having professional? Do you think that has a positive knock-on effect for Scotland?
Yeah, definitely. I think the further other teams are pushing it, other teams are going to have to catch up. So naturally, we're going to have to adopt the same things. As well with sevens, I think that's bringing more countries, rugby to more countries. So, for example, USA don't have a big rugby history, but they're now really successful just because they've put all this funding into rugby. And it's exciting.
I'd imagine with it being included in the Olympics as well, sevens for just making the sport more high profile.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now you see really successful athletes from other sports coming across to rugby and making a real go of it. So it's just growing and it's so exciting.
Absolutely, it's fascinating. Well, Megan, I won't take up too much more of your time. Megan, on behalf of everyone at the High School of Glasgow, I'd like to thank you for chatting to us today and sharing your experience with our pupils and our school community. It's been really great to hear about your journey within the game. We wish you all the best for the future and upcoming Six Nations matches in April, which fingers crossed, I'm sure everyone's hoping will go ahead. And everybody at the High School of Glasgow will be cheering you on. So thank you very much. Everybody, could you just unmute yourselves and just say a thank you to Megan as well?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today.